Hi, this is Nancy Wood with Outsourced Trade Group. I'm an international trade consultant, and I'm here to give a tutorial on U.S. export controls. I don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, about 15 minutes, but I'm going to try to cover everything in this time, at least the basics. And you will get a review on EAR and ITAR, which are the two major agencies that cover U.S. exports. So I hope this is going to help importers, exporters, and trade professionals. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at nancy.wood@outsourcedtradegroup.com. You can also visit the website outsourcedtradegroup.com. It has a lot of resources on importing, exporting, and U.S. export controls. And you can also follow me on Twitter, Outsourced Trade. Enjoy! The two major agencies governing U.S. export controls is International Traffic in Arms Regulations, governed by the Department of State, Directorate of Defense Trade Controls, and that's for military and defense goods. And then we have the Export Administration Regulations, governed by the Department of Commerce, Bureau of Industry and Security, and that's for commercial and dual-use goods. Let's go over what an export is. This may seem like a mundane question or definition to go over, but most people consider an export to be simply a product, a tangible good. However, for U.S. export controls, this can also include technical data, and that can be in the form of design drawings, technical specification, production data, technical assistance that you may be giving a foreign country. This is considered a deemed export, if you will. Also, another point to go through is that EAR, if we would like to compare, and ITAR both have different ways of determining what can be exported and what can not be exported. So therefore, coming across and figuring out what the export classification is for your product or technical data is very important. And then from there, what country you will be exporting to, and then from there, the person or entities you will be exporting to, because that can sometimes be under restriction, and also the end use and the end user. International Traffic in Arms Regulations, known as ITAR, is administered by the U.S. Department of State. It controls the temporary and permanent export of all defense articles, including technical data and software. This may also include control of temporary imports of defense articles. ITAR is something that all manufacturers of exports of defense articles, those who broker defense articles, or providers of defense services must register with the U.S. Department of State. The USML is a classification system for ITAR in which you may classify your article or technical data by. In the below slides, in which you can review, it has the categories of 1 to 21, and it goes up from firearms to aircraft and associated equipment, just to name a few, spacecraft systems and associated equipment. And what's a sidebar to this, although normally ITAR only covers defense articles and technical data, is that currently commercial satellite products and articles and technical data are controlled under ITAR, which is a point of controversy and is something that manufacturers of these products have been lobbying to change, but at the moment it is covered under the USML. ITAR also covers technical data in 120.10, and this includes information which is required for the design, development, production, manufacture, assembly, operations, repair, testing, maintenance, or modification of defense articles. This can include blueprints, drawings, photographs, etc. This does not include basic marketing material, items, or technical data that is subject to public domain. A defense service is defined in ITAR 120.9 as the furnishing of assistance to foreign persons, whether in the U.S. or abroad, in the design, development, engineering, manufacturing, production, assembly, testing, repair, maintenance, modifications, operations, destruction, processing, or use of defense articles. So if you are going to be furnishing a foreign national, whether they are based in the U.S. or abroad, with technical data, you're going to need a license or an agreement for this. Okay, we're going to talk about the Export Administration Regulations administered by the U.S. Department of Commerce, Bureau of Industry and Security. And these regulations cover commercial goods and dual-use goods. And when I talk about dual-use goods, that's articles that have commercial and military applications. You can classify your product under the Commerce Control List. It has categories 0 to categories 9, and it's important to classify your article correctly so that you're not exporting an article that requires a license, but because you misclassified it, you're exporting it without a license. Like ITAR, EAR does control technology, and their definition of technology is information necessary for the development, production, or use of a product. And it also covers software like ITAR, which is a collection of one or more programs or microprograms fixed in any tangible medium of expression. The EAR license determination process is a bit different from ITAR, whereas ITAR, if your product is under ITAR, you know that you have to get an export license in order to export. With EAR, it depends on the classification. So the first thing you want to do is classify your article or get a classification from the Department of Commerce. And then from there, you're going to want to look at the CCL, which explains the embargoed destinations or particular destinations that you can export your product to without a license, or if you export your product to a certain country, you require a license. The license determination process also applies to certain end users or a particular end use. So all these factors have to go in when you're thinking about exporting to go through the EAR regulations list to be able to determine if you need a license or not. Export control for your business. I've highlighted here what various departments in your company can do to comply with U.S. export controls. You can go through this and read my key points on what I think certain departments can do to assist either your export control personnel or whoever is in charge of your U.S. export controls with making sure that you are complying. Example of which is the foreign national requirement under EAR and ITAR at that, where certain nationals of a certain country cannot have access to technical data without a license. So human resources would become involved in this when hiring a certain person who is a foreign national who may not be allowed to access technical data without a license, and this may hinder them from doing their job if they're an engineer or some other occupation in which they do need access to this technical data. Doesn't mean that they can't be hired. It just means that in order to make sure that this employee can function well, that an export license is applied, that they know the nationality of the individual, and they coordinate with the export control professional in order to get this license without delaying this employee from being able to do their job. So please feel free to go through, read some of the bullet lists of key points that I think would be helpful for each department to do to assist with complying with U.S. export controls. I'd like to thank you for listening to my tutorial on U.S. export controls. I hope it at least gave you a basic understanding of ITAR and EAR and possibly where your product, commodity, or technical data applies. Again, it was brief. I wish I had a little bit more time to go over this. But again, if you have any questions, you can reach me at Nancy.Wood at OutsourceTradeGroup.com. You can also view the website, OutsourceTradeGroup.com. Has a lot of resources for you. And please do follow me on Twitter, OutsourceTrade, and happy exporting. Thank you.